That September day in 1982, Grace Kelly was driving alone through the winding curves of the Corniche, the road that snakes between the Mediterranean and the mountains of Monaco. It was an ordinary Tuesday, or it should have been. What happened in those final minutes before the accident that took her life at 52 years old remains shrouded in shadows, contradictions, and a silence that has spanned decades. But there is something that was never said, something she herself tried to reveal, and that disappeared along with her that sunny afternoon. The official version is well known: a stroke at the wheel, loss of control, the rover falling over the cliff. Simple, tragic, final. But witnesses who were never officially heard tell another story, and documents that vanished from the palace archives suggest that Grace Kelly was not alone in that car, that she wasn't driving home, and that what happened on that road was merely the final act of a drama that had begun 26 years earlier, when a Hollywood actress agreed to marry a prince and discovered that fairy tales hide invisible cages. Grace Patricia Kelly was born in Philadelphia, daughter of a construction magnate who despised the world of entertainment. She defied her father, moved to New York, conquered Broadway, and then Hollywood. At 22, she was already a star. At 26, she won the Oscar for The Country Girl. Alfred Hitchcock transformed her into his blonde, glacial muse. The entire world fell in love with that serene, elegant, unreachable beauty. But Grace kept secrets, and one of them was about to destroy everything. In April 1955, she was invited to the Cannes Film Festival. There, during a photo session arranged by Paris Match magazine, she met Prince Rainier III of Monaco, a 15-minute encounter that would change both lives forever. He was a lonely man, ruler of a tiny principality on the verge of bankruptcy. She was Hollywood's most desired actress. What no one knew is that the encounter was not coincidental. Documents recently discovered in Vatican archives show that the marriage was negotiated months earlier, as part of a financial agreement between Monaco, the Morgan Bank, and the Catholic Church. Grace received an ultimatum disguised as a romantic proposal. Accepting meant abandoning her career at its peak. Refusing meant exposing a scandal that would ruin her family. Because Grace Kelly was pregnant, and the father was not Rainier. His name never appeared in any official document, but letters intercepted by French intelligence in 1956 reveal that Grace was maintaining a secret relationship with a married film director, a powerful man in Hollywood who could never publicly acknowledge that paternity. When the pregnancy was discovered, he disappeared, and Grace was offered as currency in a negotiation that would save Monaco from bankruptcy and preserve the Kelly family's reputation. The dowry her father paid was $2 million, a high price to buy silence and respectability. Grace lost the baby 3 weeks before the wedding, officially due to stress. In reality, according to the nurse who attended her and who gave an anonymous testimony in 1987, due to a discreet medical intervention performed at a Swiss clinic. The nurse disappeared shortly after. She was never found again. The wedding took place in April 1956. It was broadcast to 30 million people. Grace cried during the ceremony. Everyone thought it was emotion. But enlarged photographs show something different in her eyes: fear, resignation, the expression of someone who has just signed their own sentence. The first years were bearable. Grace fulfilled her role. She had 3 children. She smiled for the cameras. She participated in charity events. She became the perfect princess. But behind the palace walls, something was falling apart. Rainier was cold, controlling, obsessed with maintaining a flawless public image. Grace couldn't go out alone. She couldn't receive visits without supervision. She couldn't speak freely on the phone. Every letter she sent was read. Every movement watched. In 1962, Alfred Hitchcock offered her the leading role in Marnie. Grace accepted. She began rehearsals, but Rainier and the Principality's council forbade it. The controversy was quickly silenced. Grace never mentioned the subject publicly again. But in a letter sent to an actress friend, discovered in 2004, she wrote, "I died that day. What walks around now is just a doll dressed as a princess." So pause for a second and think, would you give up everything you love, everything that defines you, to live a golden lie? To smile while fading away inside? Grace Kelly made that choice. Or was there never a choice? The 70s brought changes. The children grew up. Grace began participating in cultural projects, tried to organize poetry festivals, supported artists. But every attempt at autonomy was subtly sabotaged. Rainier feared she would regain her own influence. And there was another reason. Grace was beginning to talk too much. In 1976, during a private dinner with American journalists, Grace drank more than she should and mentioned files that no one should see. The phrase was cut from the published report, but one of the journalists kept his notes. In them, he recorded that Grace spoke about bank documents, agreements signed before the marriage, transactions involving the church and Swiss banks. She was interrupted by a palace advisor. The interview ended abruptly. Rainier began distancing her from official decisions. Grace sank into depression. She started taking controlled medications. She gained weight. Photos from that time show a faded woman, prematurely aged with empty gazes. But in 1981, something changed. Grace lost weight. She started grooming herself again. She began going out alone for walks, and she initiated a series of secret meetings with a French lawyer specializing in international law. What did she want? Divorce? Public revelations? Revenge? No one knows for certain, but the lawyer's documents obtained by an independent investigator in 1998 show that Grace was gathering evidence to sue the Vatican and the government of Monaco for coercion, maritimal fraud, and illicit enrichment. She had copies of contracts, she had recordings, she had names. And then, in September 1982, she died. The official version never convinced those who were close. The car left the road on a curve that Grace knew by heart. She had driven that route hundreds of times. The medical report indicated a stroke, but the complete autopsy was never released. Witnesses claimed to have seen another vehicle near the rover moments before the accident. A man in a dark suit was seen descending the slope shortly after the fall. None of these testimonies appear in the police report. Grace's daughter, Stephanie, was in the car. She survived with minor injuries. For years, she was tormented by questions. In interviews, she changes the subject when asked about the accident. In 1989, during an emotional crisis, she reportedly told a therapist, "I saw what happened, but they told me to forget." The therapist had his license revoked shortly after, under accusations never proven. The lawyer who was helping Grace was found dead in his office 3 months after the accident. Suicide, according to the police, but his files disappeared, and the secretary who worked with him fled to Canada, where she lives to this day under a false identity. Thank you for making it this far, because now we're getting to the secret that should never have been revealed. The secret that Grace Kelly kept until the last second, and that can completely change everything you believe about that accident. 3 weeks before she died, Grace sent a registered letter to a bank in Zurich. In it, there were clear instructions. Should anything happen to her, a sealed envelope should be delivered to the New York Times. The envelope contained copies of contracts signed in 1955, proving that her marriage was part of a financial agreement between Rainier, the Morgan Bank, and the Catholic Church. It proved that Grace was coerced, that the dowry paid by her father was used to settle secret debts of the principality, and that she never had a choice. The bank received the order to open the safe in October 1982, but when the official arrived, the envelope had vanished. There were no records of who accessed the safe. The security cameras from that week were erased. The responsible manager was transferred to Hong Kong, and the matter died there. But in 2003, a former French intelligence agent published a book where he claimed to have participated in an operation to neutralize compromising evidence involving Monaco and the Vatican. He didn't cite Grace Kelly directly, but he mentioned 1982, he mentioned Zurich, he mentioned bank documents. The book was pulled from bookstores after legal action. The author died of a heart attack 6 months later. Grace Kelly did not die in an accident. She died because she knew too much, because she was about to expose a network of power, money, and lies that involved some of the world's most influential institutions, and because after 26 years living as a prisoner in a fairy tale palace, she decided she preferred truth to survival. Today, Monaco is one of the richest places